Welcome, everybody, to the Channel Vision Magazine webinar featuring UniVoIP, which will share with us how Microsoft Teams direct routing service for more than 100 users can be provisioned in 15 minutes or less. I'm your moderator, Bruce Christian, Senior Editor of Channel Vision Magazine. Before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to provide you a little information about UniVoIP. The company is a forerunner in cloud communications and a provider of managed voice services, delivering the trademarked voice as a feature with direct route for Microsoft Teams, UCaaS, CCaaS, SD-WAN, and virtual conferencing solutions. UniVoIP's engineer-focused team has decades of experience in delivering forward-thinking business communications technology, and the company's passion and dedication is embodied in the superior performance and reliability of its cloud-native infrastructure. UniVoIP builds meaningful relationships with its partners and customers and offers a white glove approach to every interaction, which is evident by its customer retention rate of greater than 99%. Our UniVoIP speakers for this webinar are Michael Bassich, Executive VP of Sales and Marketing, Dean Manzuri, Chief Technology Officer, and Mehdi Shalvesi, Director of Channel Sales. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Bruce, and good afternoon, good morning to our attendees. Bruce, let me just flash the agenda real quickly. Everyone, please take a look at it. We've got a feature-packed exhibition for you folks today. As Bruce suggested, I'm going to insist, hopefully, that you correspond with us and be very, very liberal with asking questions, raising your hands. Don't be surprised if we are responding to your questions during the webinar. We look at this as an interactive two-way process. Just some basics to set the precedent for why we're having this conversation around Microsoft Teams. First of all, it has the dominant market share in the collaborative space today. There's no question about it. The second and third tier players are orders of magnitude less of influence than Microsoft. These are some of the metrics. It's worldwide, global. Consistently about 150 million daily users. They've experienced just dramatic growth during the rush to virtualization during the pandemic. And you can see the growth rate over Zoom, which is quite extraordinary. Let me just set some basics on why Microsoft has achieved such stunning success. First of all, it's darn easy to use. It's almost intuitive. Technical as well as non-technical people have found that the day-to-day interaction inside the Microsoft suite of services is truly easy. And that's, I think, is the largest reason for their success. It also offers a true multimedia collaboration suite of services for the first time. I've been involved in this industry for quite a while. And we always talked about, true collaboration. Well, Microsoft has delivered that, again, in an easy-to-use environment. It's also quite robust in how and when Microsoft is adding features and productivity tools to the suite of services. Those features are being added almost on a daily basis. And then finally, it allows organizations to truly maximize their investment in the Microsoft suite of services while removing redundant services and systems. Just let me give you an example. I would say that today, the majority of the customers that we're interacting with have Microsoft Teams, they got a PBX, And they probably have a video system, much like Zoom. With Microsoft, MS Teams with voice enabled, you can eliminate 2 out of those 3 other systems. So it's becoming very cost effective for organizations. As I suggested, it owns over 50% of the collaboration market, but here's an interesting statistic. Only about 12% of the users are utilizing the voice feature, which means they're running a PBX side by side with the Microsoft Teams, which is not going to last very long. So a couple of years ago, we made the calculation, this is before the pandemic, we made the calculation that the next PBX phenomena would become Microsoft. And that's the bet we made. Even though we are a UCaaS company, and prior to that, we were a premise-based PBX company, we successfully made the transition from PBXs to hosted voice. And we believed about 2.5 years ago that the next transition was going to be towards a Teams voice solution to handle global PBX infrastructure services worldwide. We're quite comfortable with that bet that we made. Again, as I suggested before, the pandemic, we believe, has accelerated the move towards that. But within the next 10 years, it will supplant, the basic cloud UCaaS services as a voice PBX. And let me segue right now, and you can get deeper into the mechanics of the Teams licenses and what it means to you. And let me hand the baton over to Mehdi Chavez.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. This is Mehdi Chavez. I'm the Director of Channel Sales at UniVoIP. So the slide you're looking at is essentially the landscape, the competitive landscape of different providers out there providing some sort of a calling solution for Microsoft. First and foremost, on the very left side, you have the Microsoft calling plan. Microsoft has done a great job including almost a fully functional PBX phone system within the Microsoft 365, Office 365 solution. However, there's some shortcoming as far as their calling plan. First of all, they're not a phone company, so they make their calling solution prepaid. And this we've heard from Office 365 admins and IT admins that it's some sort of a nuisance because just like a calling card, you have to watch over that balance and make sure that it doesn't go below a certain threshold. Additionally, they do not overlay some features that they consider archaic but still needed in many different companies and verticals, features such as faxing, analog for cheap analog phones, paging, external paging, or call center integration. And lastly, they charge $12 for the domestic plan and $24 for international plan. So even if you want to make one call a month overseas, you have to be on that plan. The other providers in the middle and the far right columns are your typical, old style, either SIP trunk providers or hosted VoIP UCaaS providers that essentially use, for the lack of a better word, some sort of a band-aid approach to use either SIP trunks terminated locally on a premises-based device that exposes the customer to failure, equipment failure, and it's truly against the spirit of having a cloud native and a pure cloud-based solution. When you introduce some sort of a premises-based device, they're relatively expensive because they're basically what they're doing, especially the UCaaS providers on the right side. They're using a non-dedicated Teams switch. So they're using a soft switch that they provide, hosted VoIP off of, and they kind of partition off trunking off of that, and they have to burn a license. So it's naturally it's more expensive. Their solution is not scalable because it's not focused on Teams calling. It's focused on their hosted VoIP. It's not efficient, and some of them may even require you to run a third-party client, side-by-side Teams, to be used as a soft phone, and that is totally against the spirit of true unified communications. The idea is to use the Teams client as a full collaboration and calling solution and tool. And again, they're expensive. They're anywhere between $11 to $14. So the way we do it is, first and foremost, we worked hard for a couple of years to build a platform, an infrastructure based on an architecture that's purpose-built for Microsoft Teams. Use a dedicated network, which is cloud native. Everything is in the cloud. And Dean will get into the nuts and bolts of our network and the way we do it on that side. So this method eliminates the need for any kind of premises-based, equipment and appliances. It eliminates the need for local trunks or third-party plugins, such as another soft phone client. We alongside building the infrastructure, we built a management portal that is totally 100% built basically from feedback from our partners. As you can tell from our gray hair, Mike, Dean, and I have been in this industry for over 30 years. And we constantly, in different companies heard from channel partners that, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? And, since we were, involved with BroadSoft or Cisco or, selling those solutions, we couldn't, more proprietary, rigid. But this management portal that Dean will get into it more deeply was purpose-built as well for the channel and for end user customers. So you have total visibility into every aspect and facet of the accounts and the solution. And lastly, it includes an automated onboarding workflow that, as you saw on the last slide, nobody else has among the traditional providers. We can also overlay fax, analog, and external paging using our SIP stack. So we totally complete the Microsoft PBX solution to be used as a 100% enterprise-grade phone system. So what's the benefit to end user customers? Hey, you already invested in that Microsoft 365, Office 365. Why don't you maximize on it? Why don't you use it? Going back 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you wanted to buy a phone system for, a 500-user company, and even today, if you go out there and want to buy a premises-based solution from Cisco, Mitel, Avaya, you name it, you have to spend at least around $300 per user just to get the basic phone system and voicemail. So 500 users, that's, you can do the calculation. Capital expenditure is huge. Whereas here, you have it for free. You have it for free. You just got to get a solution from somebody like us that completes the missing feature set. You're future-proofing your technology because everything's in the cloud. Everything is virtualized. If and when you need additional features, these things will be added to the platform. So all we have to do is to just activate it for the user you need it for. You substantially reduce costs. We've seen cost reduction as high as 70% per month, but average is between 40 to 60% compared to hosted providers and premises-based solution providers. And we can do a paced migration. Let's say, you have an organization, half of the company, or maybe if some people want to be on Teams, some people still want to have that traditional desktop phone, or you're not fully ready to migrate to Microsoft Teams calling solution. We can, using our calling plan and SIP stack and our infrastructure, we can do a paced migration and hybrid deployment. And of course, lastly, we include free project management, a support team that's US-based, 24/7, 365, and we do number porting because we're a tier 1 carrier. So let me transition to Dean Manzouri, our CTO, who will talk about the management portal, we call it Service Control, and our very unique automated onboarding workflow.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So what I wanted to emphasize before I actually jump into screen share and basically show you Service Control, I wanted to just emphasize the fact that we've built our network from the ground up internally. This is something that we control, and that anything is possible, essentially, based on feedback that we get from partners and customers. So this infrastructure is programmatically built, tested, and deployed. What that means is that we can iterate quickly, bring new features incrementally, expand capacity in real time, and adapt to requirements as needed. So the foundation of this network is built in a way that we support cloud-native applications. So with this cloud-native approach, there are no monolithic upgrades. There are no quarterly or semi-annual releases. Instead, updates to the service come about continuously. Everything is in containers. Something that happens at an application stack doesn't impact the network stack. They're all connected together programmatically, so a change that is needed to be implemented can happen continuously without having to wait for updates on the on the network layer. And this network is intelligently built. It has intelligence. It's self-healing. It can reroute traffic to different places. And on top of these, there are applications such as fax, analog terminal adapters, and of course our own Office Connect voice solution, which is a SIP stack. It's a SIP feature stack, which is, by the way, not needed for our Microsoft Teams deployment. So the Microsoft Teams deployment is really managed by number management system that we've built, along with our Ribbon session border controllers that are certified by Microsoft. So our service is entirely delivered natively within Microsoft Teams. We don't need another SIP stack or another client on the user's desktop for this all to work. This is a native, direct routing is a native voice solution, PSTN solution within the Teams environment. So that's really important. We do not depend on another SIP stack. It's really just the session border controllers, and then the number management system, the CDR rating engine, all of that is built internally. And on top of that, we have the single pane of glass, which allows us to do onboarding and day 2 management. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. As part of the process, when somebody signs an order for Microsoft Direct Routing Service, the first thing that's going to happen is the primary business contact gets a welcome email to go ahead and personalize their account. They'll log in and they'll set up a password, and they get to this screen that I'm showing right now. this is the first step of the workflow, the automated workflow that allows for numbers to be assigned to users. So this requires that the customer has, has a global 365 administrator involved, because they will need to authenticate to add the application that is, the certified application that's installed in the customer's work account that does all the magic. So if the primary business contact logs in, they get to the screen and they decide that they're not a global administrator, then they can invite them. They can invite as many as they need. And every person that comes in, they personalize and set a new password for their account. They log in, and they log into the same place in the workflow. Everybody is seeing the workflow exactly the same way. Any one of the administrators can go ahead and impact the workflow and move it along. So the workflow, the first step of the workflow is to basically connect our PSTN backbone to the customer's Office 365 tenant. There are many things that happen in the background. This is something that used to take weeks, if not months. When we first introduced our service, about 2.5 years ago, this took some engineers to get on several conference calls and run all kinds of PowerShell commands and exchange tokens and credentials and all kinds of stuff for this to actually work. So we've short-circuited all of that by allowing the administrator and the global admin to go ahead and go through that process in an automated fashion. So this particular case, this first step has already been complete. But basically what will happen is the admin starts the process. The workflow will start. It'll make sure that the correct team's licenses are available. Making sure that there's user licenses and also what's called phone standard license. Team phone standard license is available because that is a license you will need for direct routing. So it'll make sure that you have all the licenses. It builds the voice domains for the customer, and finally, it allows the admin to connect the backbone PSTN to their 365 admin. And then once that happens, they're ready to go ahead and assign telephone numbers. So we are connected to a number of partner peering carriers that we can automatically, ask for new telephone numbers. So for example, if let's say I want some 610 area code numbers, I can go ahead and say I need 10 of them or 3 of them. And I can go ahead and look at numbers in real time. And once the numbers come in, I can go ahead and move them over to the right. As you can see, I had previously added some numbers to this. This is a test account that I'm showing you. This is our internal test account. So you can go ahead and add the numbers to the right, and they will then become available. They become routed after reserved, so that on the next step, you can go ahead and assign numbers to users. Now, because of the fact that we have the app installed, we know which users have the proper license, the phone standard license, and they basically will show up in the pull down. So it's basically to assign a number to a user and a location. So location is important to be selected in this case for a couple of reasons. One is for billing. The billing system will subtotal each location, the services for each location, but also this is the initial address that is registered for emergency services for that particular number. So I'm highlighted in 830 Parkview Drive. This number is available, hasn't been assigned, and I could go ahead and assign it. Now, in this test account, there's only 4 users that have the proper license, and those 4 users have already been assigned, as you can see. So I don't have any other users that I can assign. These are grayed out, because they've already been assigned. But basically, you choose the license you want, you choose the phone number you want, the location you want, and then you assign it to a user. So then once this is complete, you'll get a green check mark once everything is set up by, within Microsoft. And now you're ready to make some test calls. So the next step of this is making test calls. We monitor to make sure that calls can be made and received by the users that you just assigned. For the workflow to allow for the workflow to be completed, we need at least 1 user that makes and receives a call successfully. At that point, once you complete, you basically go on to day 2 management, which will then allow you to basically manage users, assign auto attendants, and call queues, and so forth. One thing I want to emphasize is that once you do assign the user to a telephone number, that user automatically will get a dial pad like this and the telephone number that they've been assigned. So once this happens, the user can now make and receive calls to the PSTN. Of course, Teams users out of the box can make intra-company calls. They can make peer-to-peer calls to other individuals within their company. So if I'm, not only can you chat with the internal folks, you can also make calls to them. But this really just allows you to make calls outside to the PSTN. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back to the slides, and we'll continue from there.
As Mike mentioned, Microsoft owns 50% of the collaboration market. Only 12% of Teams users have actually converted or migrated to some sort of a calling solution. So the upside is huge. As partners, you can strategically position yourselves. They may not need your core solutions at the time you meet with customers, but they may be very interested in migrating to a direct routing solution for Teams. You could sign them up, create stickiness, and a few months down the road, sell core solutions. We provide full channel support. We are a fully channel-centric company. 99% of our new sales is through our channel partners, and we provide lower costs. We have 2 different models. We have an all-inclusive model that includes everything, or for larger enterprises, it probably makes sense to go with the a la carte, which is a per-user license, and we charge them for sessions and minutes of usage based on their historical usage. So please go ahead, and if you have any questions, Bruce, we're ready to respond to questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And there on the screen, you can see the phone number and the web address. So now let's get to some questions. Why should I use Teams as a phone system, and what are the benefits?
I'll take that.
Okay, go ahead, maybe.
Yeah, go ahead, Dean. No, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, I was just going to say, contrary to popular belief, Teams actually has a pretty robust PBX in the background. This has been, in development for many years. If you go back to Link and Skype for Business, and now all of that functionality is basically, offered, as part of Teams. You do have auto attendance, you have call queues, and I've been in this business for longer than I want to admit, and I can tell you, I've seen many different cloud-based PBXs out there, and it has every feature that you can think of. There are, of course, things that you may need complementary services, such as if you want to have, a full-blown contact center. Of course, we can assist you with that as well. But from a PBX perspective, it has all the feature functionality. But the number one reason you want to use a Microsoft Teams is really productivity. All of your interactions in one place. So when I start a interaction with one of my colleagues, I don't pick up the phone and dial their extension. I go to chat. I bring them up. I don't have to remember any numbers or codes. I just type their name. It comes up. I can see our previous chats right away. I can look at their presence. I can see whether they're on the phone or they're not on the phone or they're in a meeting, because this is all integrated with your Outlook calendar, so it knows you're in a meeting, and it'll indicate that. It'll indicate if you're on Do Not Disturb. I can see all of that, and then I can start maybe a voice call to you after I have all that information. I may start with the chat and say hi, call ? And they'll say yes. Then it eliminates that voicemail tag that I'm sure many of you have experienced. So it eliminates the back and forth voicemail when you're talking to your colleagues. Also, I can call them directly on their cell phone because it is part of my contacts. If Mehdi, for example, is outside, I can see that from his presence. And with the same motion, without changing behavior from the same app, I can go ahead and call his cell phone, which is really powerful. That's really why you would want to use a Teams environment, because it does increase productivity from the sense that you're using your internal office interactions as well as external interactions in one place. In the past, I've seen other providers provide a secondary SIP stack where it requires, another client to be running next to Teams, and the user experience there is diminished because now you've got telephony on one side and Teams and everything else that it does really well on the other side. It's basically everything in one place. And I think that the number one reason you want to use Teams as a PBX is because of increased productivity. I hope I answered that question. Mehdi, anything else?
No, that's it. Perfectly said.
Okay. All right. Well, then how can I best use Teams as a phone system? For example, what are the best practices for vendor selection and internal setup?
As I mentioned, you really want to select a vendor that has a dedicated and purpose-built solution for Teams, preferably a direct routing solution such as ours. Vendors who use another platform that's meant for something else and kind of like partition off, trunking off for that, you probably want to stay away from them. Look for direct routing providers, true direct routing providers that have a native cloud solution.
Bruce, I see a question in the question and answer from Seth. Is your service priced per seat, or can you right size it? The answer is yes, we can do both. We have essentially a telephone number package where you get the number, the E911, the unlimited session and unlimited domestic usage, and international calls are rated. Or you can choose to basically say, all right, we've got 1,000 users, and I really only need 50 sessions or 100 sessions. I don't need more than that, and maybe I want to buy buckets of outbound minutes. So you can buy 1,000-minute buckets to be used in aggregate across all of your users, right? And then pay for the telephone number and E911. So it can be a la carte. Basically, you pay for the telephone number, sessions, and domestic usage. International is the same. Basically, you get billed for what you use. So both approaches are available. It's simpler to just basically have, I have this many users, give me a number, unlimited usage sessions, or I want to go a la carte.
Okay. Here's a question. What do I need to have in place beforehand to use Microsoft Teams as a phone system?
Well, first and foremost, you need to have the proper licenses from Microsoft. Obviously, you got to have Microsoft Office 365 or Microsoft 365. The best version to have that includes everything is E5. If you have anything else, that's no problem. There's a small add-on you get from Microsoft, which is called Teams Phone Standard. You tag that on, and that basically fully enables your Office 365 tenant to be able to then get direct routing solution from somebody like us.
Okay. And then what does it take on the end user customer's end to set up voice for Teams and onboard users?
Dean, you want to take that on?
Yeah, so the first thing that I recommend to customers that are interested in this, and perhaps they already have Teams, use it for your internal, intra-office communications. You can make peer-to-peer calls from your Teams client to other colleagues with the Teams client. Of course, you can't call outside yet, but it helps in the way to get familiarized with, how to make a call from the Teams environment, because it'll be consistent. The experience is consistent when you get to call outside. But more importantly, it gives the user the chance to calibrate their headset or their speaker or their media connections to their PC. I think that's typically the biggest challenge for a new user of Teams. Of course, this has been, because of the pandemic, everybody's now used to using a computer media device for audio. But I recommend everybody, get a headset that they're comfortable with, or in my case, I have a little Polycom hockey puck for my audio connection. So get the users started using Microsoft Voice now, and then when the Teams direct routing is added, it'll just be consistent. There's really nothing new to learn except how do you find a contact phone number, that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, Dean, the way you answer that, then, do you recommend desktop phones or the Teams client itself plus headsets?
Yeah, there's my personal opinion is that to get the full productivity of a Teams experience is to use it the way it was meant to be, on your computer, your mobile device, your tablet, because there's a lot of things that you're not able to do when you put all of that functionality into a telephone footprint. But of course, a telephone option is available. There are Teams certified devices that you can acquire. Essentially, it is a device. It just, you don't get the full functionality. For example, you can't chat on the phone. So you still have to have your client ready to be able to do chat. And just for your phone calls, use this purpose-built device. So my recommendation is, if you can get comfortable and use a media endpoint media device to your computer and use a client, that's probably the best way to go. But if you need to have a phone, then you can do so as well.
Okay.
Dean, let me jump in, Dean, real quick while you read. There's a Q&A there for you, Dean, too. If you could read it. We've got thousands of users deployed, and a small fraction are using handsets with their Teams application. So, Dean's talking from a personal preference perspective, from a historical, empirical perspective. our customers are telling us that they don't want handsets with the Teams experience, even though it works perfectly well with some compromise features. And I just don't like all the information truncated on a small LCD screen personally. But again, thousands of users, small fraction who are using handsets. It works fine, but I just wanted to throw that in there. Dean, did you have a chance to read that Q? Dean, did you have a chance to read that Q&A?
Yeah, so I'll go back to Seth again. Is there integration with physical phones? There are two ways of doing that. So Microsoft actually does have a common area phone, which doesn't require a common area phone license, let's say, which is equivalent to phone standard, Teams phone standard license, but it doesn't require the underlying user. You don't need to have, E5, E3 or anything. It's just a common area. And with that, you can have a Teams, like a Teams certified device as a common area phone. We obviously also have a SIP stack, so we can provide you that solution over, essentially its own SIP, but it depends. Every case might be different, and we can work with you in helping you navigate, which way to go on that. We've done it both ways. So as far as SMS and MMS capabilities, we work with a partner that can enable SMS and MMS onto your Teams telephone number that we assign to you. So that SMS and MMS, basically, it comes into your Teams, and it can come into a Teams channel. So you create a Teams a team for that specific telephone number, and then you can have different channels, different people answering. Because if somebody's texting you, right, you don't want it to go to one person typically. So this allows multiple people to be able to reply. But that's an option that's available as well.
There was a question. I'm not sure if you responded to it. It's under the answered column, but I don't remember responding to it. What kind of support do you offer for when things go sideways? Dean can elaborate, but the way we do this is we start in some sort of a trial or proof of concept environment and we do very rigorous understanding on customers' Microsoft environment. From our experience in the past, when things can go sideways, we make sure they do before we cut over and before the full service is in production. However, the things that could go sideways have to do with legacy, Exchange and non-cloud Office 365 being mixed up with cloud, and we have gathered enough experience to identify those things ahead of time. Dean, you want to elaborate?
If you have a hybrid, directory, Active Directory, where you're not fully cloud, this could be a strategy for migrating completely to cloud, because many customers might start with, on-prem Exchange and Skype for Business perhaps, and to move that to the cloud, you can have a hybrid solution until you're fully into the cloud. But we can work with you on those. But that's where we come in. We're a lot easier to do business with, aside from everything else. And we want you to be successful, and we'll show you best practice if you run into issues where we had recently a customer who had previously deployed Skype for Business but hadn't really fully removed everything. So there are some artifacts, with some of the users. So we basically pointed that out and showed them how they could go in there and clean up those artifacts. You know, they thought they'd removed all the Skype for Business from their environment, but they really hadn't yet. So those types of things can happen, and you know, we will help to resolve those issues.
Okay. Now, what if some employees or stations are non-Teams users, but they still need a phone?
This circles back to the hybrid, the reference I made to our capabilities to do a hybrid deployment. That's no problem. And you know, in the background, you know, as I mentioned, we're a tier 1 carrier. We are also a UCaaS provider. So what we do is, under the same dial plan, same umbrella, we can provide phones for non-Teams users, and you know, some of those may be like, you know, common area phones or analog phones. I mean, look at schools or hospitals where they have these $10 phones that sit on walls, or warehouses or wherever, that hardly gets used, but they have to be there for compliance reasons or for, you know, occasional use, or conference room phones. Yeah, no problem. We can handle that.
Okay, and what if I still need analog phones for faxing, door phones, and overhead paging? How can that get accomplished in a Teams environment? Same thing? Okay.
Sure, same thing. It's important to note that some of the direct routing providers out there cannot do this. Microsoft definitely cannot do this, and some other direct routing providers cannot do this. But as I mentioned, since we are, you know, we have been for decades, you know, UCaaS providers, and we have our own SIP stack, we can overlay these solutions and features as well.
Okay, I've got a couple questions left. I know you talked a little bit about pricing, but overall, is there a cost savings associated with moving to Teams phone system? Absolutely.
As I mentioned, we've seen as much as 70% cost impact, cost savings impact. Average is about 40 to 60%.
Okay, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Final question before we close it. What kind of support is available post-migration?
Dean, you want to take
That's
that
a
on?
great question.
Yeah.
Let me take that real quick.
Go ahead.
Dean. Yeah, let me start off with, that's a great question. And it'll give me a chance to, I think, inject two things that are critically important. So we built up this offering with two main principles. Number one, we had to solve the problem of onboarding. And that is a long pole in the tent of people migrating to Microsoft Teams Voice today. It's problematic, it's lengthy, it involves a lot of keystrokes, and there's a lot of error and trial and error. So with our automated system, we've taken away a lot of the pain and suffering associated with migrating into Microsoft Teams Voice. And we urge you to take a look at our application, and we're absolutely willing to demo and do proof of concepts for people to prove that point. The other thing we did was we realized, even though Microsoft is fantastic at building applications, they're not really user-friendly. Go ahead and place a customer service call to Microsoft, and see what happens. So we set up, we incorporated into our general 24/7, 365 ethic. So our Microsoft Teams Voice customers can interact in that environment. We offer that service, as I said, year-round. And since we are a tier 1 carrier with a lot of experience onboarding customers, we will handle the parts of the operation that many users and Microsoft is unable to assist with. That's a great question, but I think it fits into the general bucket of why we're different. And the reason we're different is we strove to fill in some of the gaps that existed in this marketplace right now. So thanks, Bruce, for that question.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for our webinar. I want to thank UniVoIP's Michael Basich, the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Dean Manzuri, the Chief Technology Officer, and Mehdi Shalvesi, the Director of Sales. Remember, you can access this webinar and all other Channel Vision presentations on demand by visiting our website at channelvisionmag.com. And now, from all of us at Channel Vision Magazine and from our friends at UniVoIP, thanks for attending. Have a safe and prosperous day.